All right, hello, hello, hello. And I'll admit, it's been a little while, guys. It's been a little while. Uh, we've been busy with school, so that's what I'll say to that. Very busy in life, making moves. But this is a bit of a random tangent, and I've been recently doing more logic and debates related stuff. Not because I want to become some kind of debate bro, but I just want to make more sense, right? I want to make more sense. I don't want to sound like a rambling old man. So we're gonna see if we've learned anything. We're gonna put some of our skills to the test. This is a debate involving Undead Chronic and Natsu Erudite. It kind of involves some of these other players here. Alex is the host. He might chime in and say something brain dead. The topic is virgins, women being virgins at marriage.
So your family's super rich.
Like she's a multimillionaire, so if you guys get divorced, it can only help you.
All right, multi.
Okay, so they're saying, well, if the concern is money, Chronic, what if she's a millionaire? Okay. Uh, well, divorce is still a waste of time, right? So there's time. You're investing time with all these people, kind of getting involved with this woman, getting to know her, emotional investment, maybe accidentally have a kid with her, and then the kid's life is ruined. So that doesn't protect against that. Stuff to consider. And secondly, that's another body on your belt. That's another. It's the emotional investments and commitments and the pair bonding and the. You can only fall in love so many times, right? So you don't want to waste that. So it's just because she's a millionaire and maybe you're making some money out of the divorce, it's still a lot of hassle. It's still tedious and it doesn't make divorce a good thing. It slightly makes it easier to go through, but it's not a positive thing. It's not like you should go around spending your time accumulating sugar daddies to divorce. Like that's worth your time. Like that's a valuable expenditure of your life. So no, it's still not worth it.
Millionaire isn't like, at least in today's economy, it's not that impressive.
Okay, she's a billionaire.
Her family has a lot of money. She's not
Yeah.
a virgin. I don't know. It's like how many kids is she gonna give me? Am I gonna get thrown into a vat of acid in Dubai if I say the wrong thing to her father?
Well, I mean, you don't know how many kids she's going to give you either way. Like, how do you know that? You can't predict that.
Well, you can always ask her. You get a gauge of how willing she is to have a
How
lot of
many
children.
children will you bear me?
Straight.
Well, this is kind of the problem with Chronic's perspective on the whole no hymen, no diamond is he's trying to measure it utilitarian. He's trying to measure it like a utilitarian, which ignores the or reduces the more profound essence of what's going on with a non-virgin, which is the reason you shouldn't date non-virgins. The reason you should aim for a woman who's pure is not just purely pragmatic, because Alex is making a decent point in that, hey, if we stacked the pragmatic utilitarian aspects of it such that it was a good investment, now he kind of did about a bad job by making it all about money, but if Alex had just merely posed the more fundamental question, which is, hey, what if a rare instance where the pragmatists of this woman that you're dating was in your favor, like it was more pragmatic to marry this woman, but she wasn't a virgin, would you still care? So is there something in of itself, right? Because what Chronic's really is doing is he's boiling it down to something like a consequentialist framework where he's saying, well, I don't really care about whether or not she's a virgin in of itself, but only because of the consequences of divorce. Which, fair enough, but I think that there's something to be said for uh, female purity in of itself, something to be valued for itself as a virtue, because I kind of lean more into virtue ethics. That's where I am gravitating towards in life. I think there's something to be said about purity as a virtue in of itself that makes it valuable and something respectable and beautiful, and on the flip side, ugly when it's not there. And so that's something to consider in of itself, regardless of the surrounding other things, whether there's other things that balance it out or make it worth it. She's a whore, but she's a billionaire, so you get money. It's like, well, she still has an ugly soul. She's a non-virgin, therefore her soul is ugly. And that's a harsh way to put it, right? It's uncomfortable to some, but it's true. And that's what's really on the table here: is you're dating someone with an ugly soul.
No, you think that's a bad question? I mean, wait, not so you die. Not so you die. You think that's a bad question to ask for potential marriage partners?
I cannot.
Don't you do
continue with the
you do coaching, don't you? You do relationship coaching.
No, I mean, I
Do
think
you
it
think
just.
it's
I think
important
She does
to
a
talk to
relationship coaching, really? This broad? Anyone actually pay for that? Relationship coaching? What the fuck? That sounds like CIA type bullshit.
your potential partner of how many kids they want? Like, if you don't think so, that makes you look stupid.
Alex
No,
asked me
I think it came out funny, but I do
just
think
respond
Chronic is
by
right.
attacking
Is
me.
yeah, I think I think the reason she's laughing is because it just came out funny. But I agree with you that if you are like dating and stuff, it is a good question.
Who's
to
this
talk
guy in the
about.
bottom right?
Make sure on the
Looks like a
same
total
page.
fag.
But okay,
I'm
but-
laughing because it's silly. Just directly answer.
Can I
Alex.
say that on
Don't be
YouTube?
Like a feminine male
silly.
who pussies out at every direct question. Just
Oh,
answer
that's a
them.
good argument.
Pussy's
for
out.
the
Pussy's
slut.
out. Pussy's out. And this is something we have to do, guys, is anytime a woman uses a derisive insult like pussy, why is pussy a derisive insult? Uh-oh, as soon as you start to think about it, you realize that's misogynistic. Oopsie. Calling a man a pussy, you're saying he's a woman. So basically you're saying him having woman qualities or woman parts makes him less of a man, and therefore that's a bad thing. That makes him more of a woman, less of a man, that's a bad thing. So you're saying women are innately bad. You're saying for a man to be like a woman is innately bad. No one makes fun of a woman for having more masculine attributes, like being strong, or being, yeah, maybe dirty, but I don't think dirty is necessarily a masculine attribute. Everyone should be clean. But almost there's no insults where a woman gets called a dude, maybe dyke, I guess, but that's more like a lesbian thing than specifically being masculine. My point being that it's actually a misogynistic insult to call a man or a woman a pussy because you're calling the female body part derisive. You're assigning it a negative label. So it's actually misogynistic, not so erudite.
Not so erudite. Call me
We're
a
already getting
pussy.
heated. I knew this was going to get heated. All right, well, so
Yeah,
let's
call me a
go.
pussy. That's all
Your
right.
best insult is using my name. Your best insult to me is the name I supply you. You're not playing at the
I
people
haven't
table.
even started insulting you. Okay, I'm trying to stay calm on this panel. If you want me to insult you, I'll write a video insulting you, and then you could strike it down and lose my channel. No big deal. Gentleman's handshake on that.
There you go.
I don't.
That is true. Chronic is being fairly cordial from what I've seen as of now. Okay, so going back to that. So, but when like you gotta admit that like kind of like
Bro, the guy in the
course
bottom
correction
right totally gets
calculation
pegged.
is like the biggest reason guys are worried about like
That's
getting
so
divorced
gay.
is
What the
because
fuck?
they're gonna lose half of their assets. Like that's like the biggest factor. But if the girl has like significantly more money than you can only like gain assets from her.
No, I disagree. I think there's a guttural reaction when a man figures out a woman slept with a bunch of guys. I don't think it's because he's projecting into the future intelligently and thinking about his assets. I think he's like, I'm gonna claim this woman as my own. She's mine. Well, she's got some other dude's zinc dripping down her leg. That's fucking disgusting. There's a disgust reaction. There's something that resonates within a man's soul. He recognizes beauty. And he recognizes its opposite, which is a whore. These are more fundamental metaphysical aspects that none of these goobers want to touch, not even Chronic, which is unfortunate. Because I think that's really what's at stake, is you're touching an ugly individual with an ugly soul. And no man wants to... Men are just immediately off-put by hearing about women's past partners and the type of men they let hit them. It's just a gross thing, objectively. It's an ick response.
You can't lose assets, right? So assuming that she's like on the same on board with you to have as many kids as you want to, whatever that number is, like would you, at that point you consider a girl who's like a 5 or 10 body count? If there's like nothing you can lose with a divorce, you can only gain.
I think for me, I would, if I could get any answer, it would be no divorce. Period. I'd marry a poor waitress with 0% chance of divorce over the 10%, 20% chance of divorce the billionaire chick would give me.
But you don't know.
If that was less. Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah.
What about a non-virgin
Yeah,
who
I
wouldn't
mean,
divorce you? That would
I
be a
don't know
good
the
question to
answer
ask
that
Chronic.
really think on that, right? I mean, I would just assume she has a higher chance of divorcing me because she's richer than me. That's another factor that increases divorce. the woman makes more money. She's a non-virgin. No.
What about a stripper who won't divorce you no matter what? You could somehow prove that she won't divorce you. It's called a hypothetical, so don't try to weasel your way out of it. And, no, Chronic. Imagine a woman who is a stripper, so she's definitely had tons of sex, and you know somehow she will never divorce you for whatever reason. You just somehow, like, I don't know, there's some reason she won't divorce you. I don't know, maybe like uh, she really respects her father, and her father is death to divorce, and she loves her father to death. I don't know.
I'll get the small town
Were you
waitress
saying
instead.
that a woman initiates divorce more if they've had more sex partners before getting married? Was that your point?
Well, they just
Well, he's tying. Here's what
that's
he's doing.
yeah.
That is a good distinction, I guess. That is a fair distinction, but also not really because it's dwarfed by the fact that regardless of who's initiating it, divorce rates go up. So, especially given that women already have the majority on initiating divorce, it's unlikely that it's this overwhelming amount of men that are causing the increase in divorce because of women's impurity. And divorce is bad regardless of who's initiating it. I don't think the fact that it's men or women who are initiating it that somehow makes it that somehow undermines the overarching point, which is that divorce increases with non-virgins regardless of who's initiating it.
I'm kind of
Correlation equals causation.
yeah.
He's
I'm
doing-
jumping.
which is funny because he was using a soft science base. He's just using a bunch of soft sciences to just promote
Well, you
his
know,
ideas.
statistics
Well,
are
Yeah,
not
doesn't make
science to the
sense.
stuff.
Yeah,
Not
statistics are not soft
Well,
science.
But
He's
just
not.
me, I kind of like numbers.
Just
He's
a-
not-
He's not making a
you look at
psychology
the
claim.
statistics
Of
they gave you.
alpha.
He's not talking about behavioral theory.
Yeah.
Oh, not really. It's hard to
Okay.
bear, but I'll try.
Okay, you're right.
And
You
then,
need
but then
more
in the
time
same
to
breath, you're
rough it up
saying that
because
you
he
want
can do a lot.
a woman with no
Jenny,
sexual partners
Jenny,
who's like a virgin.
Jenny,
I would
let not so
imagine.
Jenny.
Jenny, let's let not so erudite
What?
answer for me. She was saying something when you
Oh,
talked about
sorry.
the 240.
I'm having a hard time
No, it's
hearing.
okay. Not so
I
erudite.
didn't
Go
know
on.
she was talking. I'm sorry. I apologize.
So women initiate divorce at about 80% rate. So they initiate most of the divorces. And what he was citing is a different study that
Slime
shows
ball.
a correlation
You can
of
hear the
low
slime
body
in her
count
voice.
to relational longevity. The issue is that these two things are not causative at all. So his claim, for
They're not
example, that her
causative.
virginity is 4 times more important is
4 times more important.
factually just false,
Factually
which is
incorrect.
correct.
It sounds like Destiny.
Bunch of stuff.
Soft science. It sounds like Destiny, but with more bitch in the voice. She's basically saying, "Oh, you can't assume a causal relationship." Me. How would it be the other way around? How would it be the other way around? You're saying that what? They're not virgins because they're getting divorced? How does that make sense? That makes no sense at all. They literally exist A before B temporally. How would it be the inverse? What, you think there's some third variable causing it? Even if that's the case, it doesn't matter what the exact nature of the relationship is, whether there's some third hidden variable, whether it's an inverse causate, which is impossible because one A precedes B. There's no way that B could cause A if B comes after A. So that's absurd. If there's some hidden variable, who cares? Regardless of the specific nature of the relationship, whether it's causative, correlative, what kind of an inverse correlation, some kind of third variable, Y correlative, Z correlative, it doesn't matter. The point is that statistically, if you choose the virgin, you're going to get the lower rate of divorce. So that's all. That's all the Chronic's saying, and that's all that matters.
Right.
So this is a... it's like moving the goalpost, but it's more like a red herring kind of, because it's pretending that the debate hinges on something else where it doesn't.
To then make an actual fallacious statement, which is just hilarious.
Wait, Kyler.
And she does the same thing Destiny does, where she throws her hands up in the air and she's like, I can't understand this. It's crazy. I can't believe it. And conservatives. It's like, Jesus, Destiny.
Do you disagree
Relax, dude.
with the underlying premise that, like,
Yeah.
for example, as a guy, if your choice is between marriage,
The logic is very simple. If you marry a virgin, the rate of divorce, chance of divorce is less. It's not causative, it's correlative. Who cares? Who cares? We're making a general statement that you're less likely to get divorced if you marry a non-virgin. There you go. Which is statistically true.
Marrying a virgin and marrying a girl with like 30 body count, that there's equal risk of you being divorced with those chicks? Like, would you say there's no difference in risk?
So statistically there is an increased risk, but the idea that her virginity is 4 times more important is not at all clear.
No, but let's ignore that statement. Let's just go back to like, okay, you're a guy, right? You have two choices.
And yeah, Chronic maybe wasn't. Yeah, I'm sure the number doesn't work exactly like that. But the point being that if women are initiating the divorce, that's really the concern. Like, men aren't concerned with the 20% chance, although they could be. I think they should be in the instance of if she cheats, you have to initiate that divorce, which sucks. Right? So you do actually have to care about that 20%. But that was the point he was making, was you don't have to care about the 20%. You care about the 80%, which is caused by women. So because women are the ones initiating the majority of divorce, a rate of 4-1 to men, there's a weighting of 4-1 in consideration of the woman that you have to like worry about. The correlation wasn't, or the demonstration wasn't made perfectly clear. So I think Chronic kind of made a mistake there, and he kind of shoehorned that kind of rhetorical line in there about the 4-1 thing. And yeah, she kind of caught him on it, but regardless, his point still stands. Chronic needs to just like simplify his point to be like, you're more likely to get divorced if you marry a non-virgin, so don't marry non-virgins because you're more likely to get divorced, and men don't like divorce, and women initiate most of the divorces, so beware.
All the other factors being, one is a virgin, one has 20 body count. All you care about is like not being divorced. Like, you would agree that your chance of getting divorced are much higher with a 20 body count chick, right?
I wouldn't say it's much higher. It is statistically significant, but it is not what we would call like clinically. It's not huge by any means, and
It's almost double. It goes from 28 to 52. What would be 56? So it's almost double. Very close to double. 52 out of 56 is what? It's 4 out of 56, 28, 19. 1 out of 19. So it's like 0.5. It's like 5%. It's 95% increase. That's very significant. So she's now like bitching about the word much. Well, I wouldn't say much. Only 95% increase.
Further on, like data on this has mostly found this to not be really true. That body count is not the best predictor of longevity. There are
not the best predictor? Oh, so now you're saying, well, oh yeah, this thing might be true, but look, there's these other predictors that are really important, like income and like if the man listens to her nagging and stupid feminist articles.
Other factors that are way more predictive. Like
Can you,
way more predictive.
And see how she has to rely on like aggressive gesticulation and like aggressive like rhetorical devices, like way and like accentuating her vowels and like performative language, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what you call that.
Can you like
Oration, like very contrived oration techniques to like make her points.
maybe put the title of that study in the StreamYard chat for me? I won't debate it now. I just want to look it up.
Which study
I
specifically?
mean, you just said there was like a lot more evidence for other factors, whatever ones you could think of.
Factors that predict divorce? Sure.
Yeah.
What factors that predict? What are you talking about? Yeah, the thing you were just yabbering on about 5 seconds ago, Erudite. Now you're playing dumb. Typical woman.
Sure, I can Google you which studies.
Oh, you're gonna Google me, you fucking jackass.
Google. If you don't know off the top.
This is like the government. It's like they tell you, oh, you owe us taxes. Oh, can you see where we got that number? No, I have no clue. I mean, file a report and we'll get it to you. It's like when a company calls you and then you call them back and they're like, oh, we have no clue who just called you. Let us forward you to our call center department to figure out where you need. It's like, you fucker, you just called me 3 seconds ago. Now I'm like following up and you.
Yeah, I'll just look it up myself. It's not a big deal.
Sure, go for it. And I'm sure you're going to find virginity at marriage is not a number one predictor.
which is that's a red herring, by the way.
I don't know. I didn't look up.
Well, you're sure you already can't.
It's a moving the goalposts kind of red herring claim, because she's saying, well, it's not the number one predictor. Well, okay, but no one ever said it was. We're not denying that other variables are important, but you're bringing other variables into the debate where it was about virgins. So you're shifting the debate topic to be about which is the strongest predictor. And well, we're not talking about which is the strongest predictor. We're talking specifically about female virginity, specifically. So this is typical dishonest leftist debate tactics.
Came up with a conclusion, and you didn't even know the name of the study. So you're so sure of what you're saying.
And she's like the fucking
Go
CRA.
look it up.
Yeah, no. You go ahead and look it up. Google it. That's my argument. Okay, that's
Yeah,
Look,
I'm
why I
so
like
Can you
Target.
see the soy boys? This guy is typing. This guy, Vikram, he's typing for her. I can't tell if Ryan is either. Yep, and that's what Destiny does too. He makes these absurd claims based off of pure intuition and guesswork. And you can tell she completely is not sure about that. She just made that up. She literally just made that up. I'll bet you she made that up. She was not sure about that at all. I could hear it in her voice. And now these little keyboard warriors are gonna go fight for their queen and go find the evidence. Guarantee you.
I don't know why you're laughing. I'm so
because
confident
it's
that
funny.
what
I
you're
was
saying
talking to
doesn't
someone that
top
thinks
out
they're
on one-
scientists,
This
and they're
is the issue.
this
You're
is their
just
Look at these two.
logical fallacies. Just
One of them's gonna chime up and say they found it.
Individuals cannot be treated well with statistical information. This is why normative claims are helpful when we're looking at like societal-wide issues, but they're not so helpful when you're trying to decide individual partners, because statistical norms don't apply so well to individuals. This is actually why, for example, things like social, like personality psych, for example,
Woman
map
talk.
on really well to normative statements about groups, but are terrible at predicting individuals, because normative statements don't apply to individuals.
This is sophistry.
And Undead Chronic, Mr. Scientist, will be the first one to tell you this.
At home.
So if you have 100 guys and I have 100 guys, and you tell them to marry non-virgins, and I tell mine to marry virgins, which of our groups are going to have less divorces in 30 years?
Ooh. So a normative claim.
Ooh.
No, that's a
Answer the
theoretical.
question.
Which do you think?
Answer the question,
We
Erudite.
have enough information to say.
And
Catch her.
Well, theoretically, based
Trap
on
her.
the data that we
Bite
have,
her. Don't let her go.
probably the virgins, unless the replications
Probably.
follow. The issue is that what you're doing is a formal fallacy where you are taking a normative claim and then you're applying that to an individual.
So the principle of deduction, of deducing things from the general to the particular, that's illegal. So you're not allowed to make generalizations. You're not allowed to make claims based off of general statements. So basically, if I say, statistically, I'm going to get bitten by a bear if I'm in the forest and there's a bear, he's probably going to bite me and eat me. No, you can't do that because that's generalizing. I mean, the bear might not eat you. You don't know that he's going to eat you. That's taking a normative claim and trying to assign it to a particular. That's a fallacy. What's the name of that fallacy? I've never heard of that fallacy before, of deducing things from general statements. That's not even a fallacy. Like if I take a statistical probability and try to assign it to an individual or a particular instance, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's called deduction. Induction would be the opposite, which is taking an aggregate of individual instances and then compiling them together into a general rule. In math, this is P of n, it starts P of 1, the base case. P of 1 is true. And then, assuming P of n is true, prove P of n plus 1 is true. And then that creates your general principle, which you can use to then prove as your conclusion that P of n is true. This is a principle of mathematical induction. The idea is that you take a base case, you take some kind of rule, you then extend that out for the particular instances to generate a universal rule. Once you prove it for the base case and for n plus 1, then that proves that it holds for all of P of n. That's induction. The opposite of that, taking instances and aggregates of instances to prove a general rule, is called deduction. which is taking a general rule and proving it in an instance. Basically, if we know P of n is true, and we have P of some value, which falls under the domain of n, we can prove that that's true. So if I have P of 3, we know P of 3 is true, because P of 3 is within P of n. So basically, in the case of Undead, Chronic, and the virgins, we know that virgins are statistically less likely to marry. You're dating a virgin. That is a individual. That is an instance that properly follows under the domain of the general statement. So it would be like P of 7, which follows under n. P of n is true, therefore P of 7 is true. Therefore, you are less likely to get divorced by the virgin that you're marrying, because that is a proper instantiation of this general principle. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is completely legal. That is not a fallacy. So I would love, I hope Chronic asks the name for this fallacy, because I don't think it's not a real fallacy.
Well, I'm looking at one variable, right? No, of course there's other variables that can influence whether someone gets divorced or not. I've never said there wasn't. I've never said there wasn't.
Do you know what an ecological fallacy is?
How about you explain?
Ecological fallacy. I feel like that's definitely not applicable. I guarantee that's not applicable. A logical group is when you assume that what is true for a group is true for individuals within that group. That's not related. That's actually not related. That's talking about properties of a group versus properties of an individual. That's not what statistics does. No, that's not right. That's not related. Ecological fallacy would be something like saying a country is nationalistic, therefore all the individuals inside it are nationalistic. Because you can have properties for groups of things, a thing that is a group, that doesn't occur within an individual. Ecological fallacy and example. I think that's talking about the ontology of a group and how that ontological aspect does not carry into the individual necessarily. Example, if a person lived in a polluted area, they are more likely to have a respiratory disease. What? Imagine a study that shows that in country X, people who live in areas with a higher pollution. What? Study shows that in country X, people who live in areas with higher pollution tend to have higher rates of respiratory diseases. In country X, people who live in areas with high pollution What? This conclusion may be an example of an ecological fallacy, because if the study is what? Study is looking at average rates of disease in polluted areas, not individuals. An individual living in a polluted area. Okay, I don't get it. Can you simplify the example? Okay. Imagine a school where the average test scores of its students in one class are higher than in another class. Okay. Since Class A has higher average test scores, every student in Class A must be better at tests than every student in Class B. This is what I'm talking about. You have an aspect. Okay, so I'm right. So since Class A, so there's an attribute about Class A, which is that, excuse me, as a group, you have this ontological facet of Class A, which is that on average, Class A outperforms Class B. Does that mean that every student in Class A outperforms Class B? No, because it could be the case that a few high-performing individuals in Class A are carrying the average for Class A. And actually, everybody else in Class A is lagging slightly behind the average. And then it could be that everyone in Class B has the average. So it could be a factor of distribution that's affecting it. So this is an ecological fallacy because it assumes that because Class A as a whole has higher scores, the individuals in Class A must have a higher score than every individual. But students in Class A might have low scores, but students in... So that's more like because of distribution. Okay. In the pollution example, the error happens because we're assuming that a group level trend, higher pollution equals higher respiratory diseases, automatically applies to individuals. Why wouldn't it? Areas with higher pollution tend to have higher rates of respiratory disease. Someone might assume that if you lived in a polluted area, you are more likely to have a respiratory disease. I don't understand. So the mistake isn't about the distribution, it's about incorrectly applying group level data, pollution and disease, to individuals without considering that individual level factors like genetics, lifestyle. That average performance of a group. I still don't get the pollution example. Can you... Since coffee drinkers live longer on average, every person who drinks coffee must live longer. Okay, but this is a problem with generalizing, or this is making absolute claims from general trends. Okay, but isn't the fallacy... occurs when you assume that a pattern observed at a group level applies universally. Okay, but what if not universally to individuals? If you drink coffee, you will live longer. The average coffee drinker in a town tends to live longer. If you drink coffee, you will live longer. No, that's a different... I'm pretty sure it's a different fallacy. Because this is a prescription. It's saying if you drink coffee, you will become like this statistic, which is not necessarily true. Because it could just be that the coffee drinkers are people who get up early. And the people who get up early are actually living longer because they have healthy... circadian rhythms, right? But it would be true to say that if you took a person who drinks coffee in the town, statistically, they are more likely to live longer than a random person selected that didn't drink coffee. On average, they would have a longer lifespan. That would be true. So I'm not sure what's going on here. I've never heard this fallacy. Let's go to Wikipedia. It's called an inference fallacy or population fallacy. Inferences about the nature of individuals are deduced from inferences about the group. fallacy of division is sometimes used to describe the fallacy of division, which is not a statistical fallacy. So there's 4 camps. Mean and median. Okay, so this is the one we were talking about earlier, where it's like test scores. Yeah, so that makes sense. I figure that. Individual and aggregate correlations. So research suggests that Protestants have higher rates of suicide than Catholics. Okay, similar. Even wealth is a positively correlated to voting Republican in the U.S. We observe the wealthier states tend to vote Democrat. Okay, that could be a good example. So individual wealth correlates with more Republican voting. However, for wealthier states as a whole, but a wealthier state has nothing to do with a wealthy individual. Those are completely unrelated. So her example of non-virgins as a group wouldn't really correlate because the fallacy comes from conflating an aspect of a group, because groups have their own innate ontologies, because you can have states which, yes, they're composed of individuals, but a state has its own nature and its own attributes, its own parameters and operations that extend past the nature of just being a collection or aggregate of individuals. For example, voting patterns in this instance. So we observe wealthier states tend to vote Democrat despite a individual's wealth correlating to voting Republican. Could be because the wealthiness of a state has little to do with the wealth of the individuals, or it involves a slew of other factors that are causing it to vote Democrat. So when you try to transition from a statistic about an individual to a statistic about a group, other factors are affecting the group that are not affecting the individual. Like, for example, individuals don't have to contend with the fact that states have a bunch of factors that affect them, that are affecting states that don't affect people. Like, for example, states have to concern themselves with what percentage of their land is rural versus urban, because urban places tend to vote Democrat. So if a state is urban, it's going to vote Democrat, even if an individual doesn't have to concern themselves with whether or not immediately, at least on the metric of wealth, whether or not they're going to vote Republican or Democrat. So basically, there's aspects that belong to groups that you don't find in individuals. Like the way, I don't know, like a colony of bees moves. There might be certain like weird behaviors about groups that you don't find in the individual. Like how close the bees are to each other in a group, right? Like how condensed and how organized in their flight pattern the bees are. That's not something you're going to find in an individual bee, but you can observe that in a group. So the fallacy comes from taking an attribute of a group and then trying to translate that to some kind of truism or truth about an individual that isn't there. Yeah, average versus the average, right? Averages versus medians, right? Like, think about it this way. If you have a group of 100 test scores, split them into two groups of 50. Okay? Oh, look. Group A of 50 tests has a higher score. Group B has a lower score. But it turns out that everybody got a 75, except on all 100 scores were 75, except for one guy on Group A had 100. Okay? So that's why they were higher. And then it actually turns out that every other person in Group A, there was one guy with 100, and the rest of them all had 74.9. Okay? And then everyone in Group B had 75. So in Group A, you have one guy with 100. Then you have everybody in Group... No, sorry. Okay, fuck. Everyone in Group A has... There's one guy with 100, and then the other 49 have 74.9. Everybody in Group B has 75. So the average of Group A is above 75 because of the guy with 100. Does the math... Am I right? Am I fucking crazy? I just want it to be right. I'll just change whatever number it is. Okay, well, just 49.9. Wait, no, it is higher, isn't it? That's right. Okay, so the average, the total is 75.4 versus 75. Okay, so they have a higher average of 75.4 because one guy has 100 and then the other 49 people have 74.9. Okay? Then in the other group, Group B, everybody has 75. So then you might say, well, okay, but the average for Group A is higher, it's 75.4. And if the average for the group is higher, that doesn't necessarily mean that you picking a random person in Group A and taking their test as your own is going to give you a higher score. Because the majority of them have 74.9, all of them except one, which is lower than everybody in Group B. So there's a 98% chance that the test you pick from a random person in Group A is actually going to be lower than the person in Group B, and you'll lose. Right? Except one person has 100. So yes, technically the group average as 75.4 is higher than the group average at B because of that one guy with 100. But on a median basis, because like where do those test scores follow? And if you pick an individual out of that group, it's likely going to be a 74.9. Very likely, 98%, which is less than all the people in Group B with 75. So that would be an example of the ecological fallacy. How that applies to virgins in Chronic's context, I have no clue. And how would she mechanize that? How would she demonstrate that? How would she prove that? Because she can't just say you're not allowed to make generalizations. She can't just say that because we have tons of studies all the time that make generalizations. It's like saying men on average are more likely to rape than women. It's like, well, no, you can't say that. I mean, that's inferring things about a group. That's the ecological fallacy. It's like, no, you actually have to prove how that would be the case. So it's the individual group distinction in inferences. But there's no meaningful distinction between a group of virgins and individual virgins that I can think of. There is a meaningful difference between an individual person and a state, which is more than just a collective of individuals. Likewise, if you're working with medians or means or test scores, there's complication there. But we're just talking about virgins and their likelihood of divorce. So I don't know how she's going to mechanize that. I have no clue. She made a slightly decent point that this fallacy exists, but it's also just dumb pointing out a fallacy that nobody else really knows about. That's kind of like very complicated and just obfuscates your point.
From my chat.
Sure. Refers to a methodological error in which characteristics of a population as a whole
She's reading it off the
are
side.
attributed
What a
to groups
cunt.
within that population without any real connection between them being demonstrated. So while it is true to some extent that virginity does protect longevity, that doesn't mean at an individual level, virgins are more likely to have a longer relationship than non-virgins.
I kind of feel like she's wrong though, because I would imagine that the way you would do the study is on an individual basis. So no,
It's not actually true. This
because I imagine that the way they would do the study is they would aggregate individuals into groups based off of your sexual partner count. So there would be no way to conflate like average. Jesus Christ, cat, shut up. Go away. Fucking cat. No, because first of all, it's incredibly significant. It's way too significant to be boiled down to be an ecological fallacy, and it probably holds true even when you break it up by group. It holds true even when the trend holds true even when you break it up by two partners versus 5 partners versus 10 partners. The trend continues. So there's no way it could just be like some illusion.
is a fallacy. This is, you learned this in stats. I know you know this.
So what you're saying is, if I have a statistic about red M&Ms being poisonous, and you're saying, well, some of these candies aren't M&Ms, they're Skittles, that's a fallacy. You know, don't feel bad if you eat a red candy. I'm not trying to make
That's kind of a good way to put it.
a giant statement on this is exactly what you need to do, 100% guarantee. I am talking to my audience, and what I'm saying is, if you want to reduce the chances of getting divorced, one of the important factors you can look at is whether or not she's a hoe bag, whether or not she has a body count.
So good partners make good partners. Virgins don't necessarily make good.
That's a meaningless statement. Good partners make good partners. That's a non-statement. A equals A. Well, good one.
Partners. That's the issue.
Never let someone do that. Good partners make good partners. Not if anyone does that. A equals A. That's a non-statement. It means nothing. It's purely rhetoric, and they're lying to you.
You're still doing the ecological fallacy.
And this, I think this is
M&Ms
probably,
are not people.
M&Ms are not people. This is like this shit you'd hear in a political debate. America is not for sale.
yeah, this is the difference.
And non-virgins aren't poison.
This is the difference. This is the difference.
How about like the rhetorical fallacy of making extremely obvious truth claims? Freedom is good. We are Americans. We won't give up. M&Ms are not Skittles.
Hard and tough sciences.
You are a Skittle. Your brain is Skittles. Stop eating the Skittles.
No, wait, no.
I'm doing the Destiny Hands, but woman version. Skittles.
Erudite, calm down.
My brain is 100% M&Ms and Skittles.
Calm down. Calm down. It's okay.
I'm doing the Destiny Hands. I'm having a Adderall episode.
Explain this to you again.
Calm down. Let
I have too many
me
Xanax.
explain it.
Go ahead. I'll go get water while you explain. I can still
Yeah,
hear you.
go, please. Please
I
go.
can hear you.
Too much Adderall.
So go ahead.
Okay,
I can,
cool.
I'm just like,
Oh no, I got it. I'm real threatened.
I'm just letting you know.
Too many antidepressants.
So like,
Or not enough.
Literally letting you know that I can hear you. So as you explain, I'm not.
no,
just
it's
trying to
cool.
be
Go
rude.
get
I
your
just-
water. Hydrate. It's cold outside. Go get
This
some water.
neurotic Spurg woman. Look at this
Yeah,
hyper
so-
neurotic Spurg woman.
The further up you go in the complexity of a scientific field, the more explanations you can give for everything, right? So hard sciences for me, I guess number one's math, right? You can kind of, if I have a bad math proof, you guys be like, that's bullshit. That doesn't equal that. From there, it goes to physics. Physics is really math intensive. From there, it's chemistry. Then it's biology. From biology, you kind of jump to psych and soc. Very interesting, right? Very complex, extremely complex. So they have to
I'd say archaeology
diagnosis.
and
you have to account for a million different variables.
archaeology
And
and
you can sit down and argue at a table, being like,
anthropology.
well, you didn't account for this, and this, and this, and
are kind of the in
what if
between.
your subjects took
between
this
biology
baseline
and
to
psych.
the study today, and my subjects drove. All that comes into it. I am not interested. I am simply not interested in arguing about what makes a good partner as a person. It's too complex of a problem looking at just a human being, right? I am more interested in talking about biology, hair bonding, that kind of stuff. That's my expertise.
Oh, that was a mistake. Because that overcomplicates it again. Is now he's going to make it like a biological thing, where you shouldn't date virgins because the evidence, the science is not really there either. It's very messy. No, it's just I would just go with statistics. Statistics is easier.
So if someone comes and says, "Whoa, Chronic, I have this girl. She loves me. She has a body count of 2. I really trust her. We have the same goals, but you say no hymen, no diamond. What do I do?" I'm like, it's your life, bro. If you think it's gonna work out, marry her, whatever.
No,
Good
you
luck.
gotta dump her. I'm just fucking.
Well, that's not what I said.
I know,
But
I'm
sure.
just memeing, dude.
Oh no, he's just memeing. Oh yeah, no hymen, no diamond. You gotta take her to the gynecologist on your first date, bro. You gotta confirm it.
Be hilarious.
Let me
You don't need a gynecologist. The father used to do it. That's a bit queer, ain't it?
pose a question to Chronic. Okay, let me just pull this up just so we have. So this is the study, right? That you reference, I've referenced, blah blah. So here's what's really interesting thing about the study, right? You notice like the risk of divorce goes up until 2 partners, but then after 2 partners it goes down and only
Yeah.
catches up at 9 partners. So
2000s. This is very old data. Is this when they get married? Also, yeah, I don't really care. This is very old data. This needs to be updated. 2013. But yeah, and look at that data. That's way too significant. That's actually really telling data. But that's old data. The divorce rates are way too low for that. Way too low. But he's asking why it slightly gets better after 3 to 4 partners. I have no clue. My guess would be a lot of people lie and say they have 2 partners. Be my guess. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of people who belong in the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 category who are lying and say they have 2 partners. That'd probably be why.
my question to you would be, if you have a choice between marrying a woman with two partners or
Right.
8 partners, who would you pick?
Oh man, yeah. No, I every time I look at that chart, I'm just like, what the mother living crap is going on in that little curve there? 2 or you said 4? So what's
Or 8, right? 8 is still it's 4 times as many body count, but it's still lower divorce risk.
yeah, so 5% less chance of divorce for a 8 body count. I'll probably bite the 5% and go for the 2, to be honest. But it's not just divorce. It's not just divorce outcomes that are influencing my want.
None of them will talk about the spiritual, you notice? None of them will say that, like, yeah, a woman who has 2 partners is a whore. She has an ugly soul. That's a disgusting individual, and it repulses me on a guttural level. You don't care about your family. You care about getting dick downed and free meals. No thanks.
For a virgin.
Oh, what else
Okay,
is there?
so what are the other factors? Yeah, that's where I was going to get with that.
Yeah, so I'd say, it's the divorce. There's a religious input to it. There is a kind of I'm sure Erudite would have a better term for it, but more like pride or like
She's totally tweaking, bro. Like, Erudite is so on drugs. Can you see? She's totally on drugs, dude.
kind of it's not religious, but it's selfish. I don't know what to say.
Like ego, maybe?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Ego.
Okay.
So, could you explain something?
Okay.
I don't understand how this is happening in real time. If you're such
Sure.
a rigorous, hard scientist,
Oh, she's gonna
how
go back
do
to
you
this
feel-
stupid fucking the ecological balance. She doesn't even understand what it means. Give me an example. Give me an example of where the ecological fallacy plays out, and how your intuition about a statistic is wrong, and it's actually this other thing. I did a pretty good example with Group A and Group B test scores, but that comes down to the median and average not aligning in terms of what truth they communicate. So it's different than what you're trying to use here with virgins. So give a good example. Explain how this ecological fallacy could in fact prove that women are not virgins. Because if you're just going to use a Nawalt argument of like, well, not all women. Maybe there's a woman who's, has a 10 body count, but she's got a heart of gold. What about that? That would be called a statistical anomaly, which doesn't disprove the generalization. So that's completely different. That would not be the ecological fallacy. So please, if you're gonna harp on this, then at least demonstrate it. Like, walk me through it then. She's gonna go through it. She's gonna harp back on it for the 4th time, and not help at all. It'd be like forcing someone to do this stupid routine. Like, no, you have to walk through the lines, and I'm clearly struggling to walk through the lines. Help me out. Walk me through the lines. Like, don't be an asshole.
Stats 101 so hard, where you were unironically constantly arguing for an ecological
Oh
fallacy.
my, fuck this woman.
Which
I
isn't
would
even
beat
an
this woman up.
informal fallacy. It is a formal fallacy.
It's a formal fallacy, guys.
It is a crux. It is math.
Like, Jesus, woman, shut up.
Math.
It's math. It's math, okay? You deny math. Walk me through it then. Explain it. If you're so smart and you're going to be, oh, it got me in this fallacy, explain the fallacy. Otherwise, you're just gesturing to something that I don't even think you really understand what you're talking about. I don't think you're smart enough to actually understand this thing you're gesturing towards. Explain exactly how it's an ecological fallacy.
Mathematically unsound to argue. We know in stats that you cannot take normative claims and apply them well to individuals. This is why when you're talking...
No, that's not what that means. It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to make normative claims. That's not at all what it means for stats. It means that if there's an aspect that, if there's a truth about a group, you can't extend that truth necessarily to the individual. You're at least, and it's not even that you can't, it's that you could be susceptible to the ecological fallacy under certain conditions. Like there exists a deviation between the mean and the median, like example with the test scores, right? Or if there's some kind of like group attribute that is not present in the individual. But for the example of virgins, there's nothing about a group of virgins that's going to be different from a group, like from individual virgins. We're not analyzing virgin women and non-virgin women as groups and analyzing group behavior. We're analyzing them as individuals. So that doesn't really make sense.
Talking about partner selection, you don't typically
Partner
use
selection.
statistics. You have to
I
fundamentally
spit too much when I talk.
judgment, because like statistical
Statistically.
norms don't apply.
Penis.
In the case of your bag of
Puh,
M&Ms,
Haktua.
M&Ms have immutable characteristics
M&Ms.
of some of them being poisonous.
Poisonous.
Sluts
Poisonous.
have an immutable characteristic of fucking divorce. That's what you're doing right now.
That's
That's
just a
what-
higher chance of divorce.
Okay.
This is clearly an autistic, neurotic woman who's mentally ill and on antidepressants and a bunch of other drugs, I would assume. I don't know enough about drugs. I'm not some drug expert. Okay? Not a drug expert, but she's definitely tweaking, bro. She's definitely tweaking. Definitely on something. I would guess Adderall, maybe some weed. Who knows what else. I'm going to assume she is until proven otherwise. So yeah, this woman is not mentally sound.
A higher chance of divorce doesn't mean that sluts have an immutable characteristic of being more likely to divorce. Do you understand that?
When you
I love how women are like trying to convince you that like to marry sluts. It's so funny. It's like the one female debater. Her whole thing is like debating on why you should marry sluts. It's funny.
looking
It's not like how do we save the world? How do we fix poverty? How do we fix corruption? No, let's figure out how to get men to marry sluts by argumentation. Nice.
entire population,
Very classy.
they have more divorces than an entire population of virgins. The
Yes.
problem here is
disputed
you studied, your field of study takes in a million different variables. I'm not saying those variables don't matter. Don't get butthurt about it. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm not saying it was useless. I'm just saying I'm looking at one single variable. You go, but I know tons of sluts that stayed married. I know it's about whether they do this, and this.
That's not what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
care. Like I don't care if they're submissive. I don't
is-
care.
But Erudite's also being very uncharitable, and she's not helping explain the fallacy. She's just saying, "Oh, fallacy." That'd be like you do paperwork for the government, and they keep rejecting it because one little tiny piece of information is wrong, and you're like, "Could you just tell me where the information is wrong?" And they go, "Nope," and then they keep like harping you on this one thing without giving you any insight into what they're talking about.
care if
No,
they get
no,
angry. I don't
stop.
care if they have 2 left
The
feet.
issue is you're saying 2 + 2 = 3, and I'm telling you.
Oh.
you're
Nobody's
doing
not. Nobody's not though, and you haven't even demonstrated that. You haven't demonstrated how it's an ecological fallacy. The ecological fallacy doesn't just say that you're not allowed to generalize or make uh, like individual claims from some kind of general truth or generalized uh, principle or some statistical truth. Like generally, you can actually take group attributes and prescribe them to individuals, unless for whatever reason. I think it would be on you to demonstrate that there is a hidden ecological fallacy here, because generally you can take attributes about a group and prescribe them to individuals. That's generally an intuitive, sound thing you can do, unless there's some reason as to why you couldn't. And you haven't really demonstrated at all why that might be the case. Like, you haven't even given an example. You haven't mechanized how this is a fallacy or where the fallacy comes from or demonstrated it to the audience. Like, don't you have an audience that you're supposed to be communicating things to and, like, walking through your logic and speaking truth to and converting? How are you helping convert your audience to your position if you can't even walk your points through? She only cares about getting the Pyrrhic victory, the technical win. She doesn't care about, like, actually making good points.
Logical fallacy. This is a formal fallacy. You're just wrong. You cannot take group normative claims and apply them to individuals. You can't do it.
Okay, but the group of virgins in the study is actually not a group. It's an aggregate of individuals. So it doesn't actually have group status. That'd be my retort to her quote-unquote ecological fallacy. We're not talking about a group of virgins. We're talking about an aggregate of individuals. Well, how's that different from a group? That's exactly what the ecological fallacy is, actually, which shows you don't understand what it is, which is that the group has specific attributes that individuals don't. Like, states can be more urban or not, and individuals can't really be more urban or not, right? Or states can have political swing, or they can have systems of governance, they can have tons of attributes that an individual doesn't, right? So when you transform an individual into a group, or vice versa, it loses or gains attributes and considerations. But when we look at a study about an aggregate of virgins and non-virgins, I don't understand where the aggregate of non-virgins for the study becomes a group. Or gains some kind of group characteristic. It's actually not. It's just an aggregate of individuals. And you haven't proved that, at least according to the ecological fallacy, that this is a group. What the study really says is that individuals who are non-virgin, there we go, this is how you get around it. Individuals who are non-virgin are more likely to divorce their partner. There. We're not saying non-virgins as a group. We're saying individuals who are non-virgin, because that's ultimately what her fallacy boils down to. Is, oh, you're talking about non-virgins as a group. It's like, no, we're saying non-virgins as individuals are more likely to divorce. Oh, well, okay, because there you go.
It's not just. I'm not just like being mad because I'm like, what if sluts are nice? I'm not saying
Sluts as individuals, not as groups. There you go. Because that's what the study is measuring. The study is not measuring group attributes. The study is not blindly assessing scores, or Group A's test scores, average scores, and Group B's test scores. It's actually looking at individual test scores. And it's assigning them attributes and characteristics and making truth claims about the individuals, not about the group as a whole. Right? Like, if I do an economic study, my study is making claims about the individuals and claims about those individuals, not about economic groups or about the state as a whole. So that would be how we would escape the ecological fallacies, by realizing that the study is not making claims about, or just rephrasing it and saying, well, okay, then all we can really say is that individuals who are non-virgin are more likely to divorce. There you go. Does that clear that up for you.
saying, what if sluts are nice? What I'm saying is sluts leading to divorce is not immutable. You can't actually track that
It has nothing to do with mutable or immutable.
from a normative claim. Somebody being more slutty and having a 20 body count, if she has all of those other factors, might end up being an excellent partner. So
Sure.
if, for example,
Might.
you just do
Well, okay, but that's kind of all things being equal. That's another part that Chronic had said earlier that she's not taking into consideration.
things like selecting your partner on virginity, you're actually setting up men to select for worse partners potentially because they're not selecting on things that matter.
Wait,
Yeah, I'm not just saying just select for virginity though. But let me pose this to you. Okay. So
And he could be right because there could be a correlate between virginity and some other worse attribute. Like let's say I don't know, income has some kind of correlation with divorce rate. The richer the woman is, the more likely she is to divorce you. Or how about the inverse? She's poor, she needs your money from the divorce, she divorces you. This is purely hypothetical. I think it's the other way around actually. But whatever. Let's say that there's an inverse, or there's a correlation between inverse correlation between income and divorce rates. So the poorer she is, more likely to divorce. Okay, and then basically, what if virginity tracks on to lower income? Then you run into a problem where could actually be correlating to another variable that's causing a lower or higher divorce rate. So I kind of understand what she's saying, but that's part of the all things being equal clause, is that we're just trying to isolate one variable and analyze it. You're trying to reintroduce and conflate other variables, but we're not looking at those other variables. We're merely considering the one variable, which is virginity.
African American child goes to the hospital. My finger hurts. It hurts so fucking bad. 5-year-old kid, his finger looks all kinds of jacked up. Well, just because African Americans are more likely to have sickle cell, it's not fair to assume this small African American child could have sickle cell. Let's put that in the bottom of the differential. I am thankful to God women like you don't run the medical system.
Sickle cell is an immutable trait. Divorce is not.
Wait, I'm actually.
What do you mean? Divorce is not a trait. It's not an immutable or immutable trait. It's not a trait. It's a statistical phenomenon. It's an event. So it's like saying a rock is not a tasty food. Sure, it's not a food at all. So that's a misleading statement.
Also not seeing the issue with Chronic's reasoning. I mean, like, it seems like, okay, maybe I'm not a science major, so maybe I'm missing something, but it seems that if you have a massive...
And that's really what Erudite should be thinking about, is like, it's a pretty obvious intuitive claim that if non-virgins are less likely to divorce, then you should date a non-virgin. That seems pretty fucking intuitive. I don't know how you're going to weasel your way out of that one. Non-virgins less likely to divorce, therefore you should marry a non-virgin. It's like, yeah, pretty straightforward.
Study, which I think pretty much everyone agrees that study was like done pretty well, that shows that, okay, you take massive amounts of people, women with like this much body count, divorce at this percentage. Obviously that's not a guarantee. It doesn't mean that if you pick a virgin that she's 10%, but that just means the average. Like, if you replicate the situation so many times, that the chances are, you know, if you're a betting man, you have better odds of that girl not divorcing you. I mean, that seems like a reasonable conclusion. Like, what's off about that?
So the issue is that when you assume normative claims
She's just going to gesture to the fallacy again
of a
and just read it off of Wikipedia.
population to individuals within that population, it leads to false or inaccurate conclusions all the time.
She's literally reading
Because
off a slide.
The issue is basically this. When you look at like the stats of like the 100 men that Chronic Undead suggested, right? So you got this nice bell curve of the longevity of the relationship. And then you're going to plot the longevity against, for example.
Yeah, but it doesn't work because we're not. No, because that's quantifiable variables versus, like binary. So that doesn't work. Like, she's trying to do what I'm doing, which is the test example, test scores of Group A and Group B. But we're not looking at some kind of sliding variable, quantifiable, like test scores or something with numbers where it's an amount. We're looking at yes or no, true or false, divorced or not. So there's no way that like there could be a difference of median and mean. right? Like the test score example I gave, because it's either you're divorced or you're not. So there's no way to hide fallacies or to hide obscure truths or mislead. There's no wiggle room for misleading statistics in something binary like divorce. At least not in the way that she's about to go down her analogy. There might be other ways, but this analogy she's about to make won't apply to divorce, where it's a binary operation.
Virginity. You are going to see that broadly overall, virginity is mapping on higher. However, the reason why it's mapping on higher isn't clear. Maybe it's virginity, but maybe it's a million other things. And this is the problem with soft sciences that I would agree with chronic undead, is that it's really hard to tease apart what these factors actually matter at an individual level. Which is why at an individual level, if you take the correlation and say, okay, virgins make better partners, that's not what this is showing. Because the problem is that you have this whole bell curve, and you might select a woman, maybe you select a woman with a really high body count who's really high on the chart, and you just lucked out, and now you've walked.
Because that would just fall under the all things being equal clause. So no.
Away from that woman because you've assumed that she's not a virgin, so she can't be a good partner. When she's a perfectly viable partner, your heuristic was bad. You're applying something that didn't apply.
Sure.
Well, that's using other variables. So we're not looking at other variables. We're just making claims about one particular variable. So we've already addressed that.
You're saying with some kind of external variable that's not recorded that happens to be associated with virginity.
Typically, that usually is what it is.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, if it's not virginity, it's something that just.
Well, you could say religiosity, like that'd be a valid example of a probably real Y correlate variable, where it's actually the religiosity that's causing the virginity, and it's also causing them to divorce less, because adherent religious people are less likely to believe in divorce.
In a weird way, right? The most often one I hear is, oh, they're religious, right?
Yeah,
That's
there you
kind
go.
of the most common things. Like, well, virgin girls are more religious, and if they're more religious, they're less likely to divorce. Cool. Go for the population of virgins. We don't know what the factor is, but there's something in that population that makes you less likely to get divorced.
So I kind of want to push on that note, like this like we're looking, if we're specifically
Dorito
selecting
Man,
for factors
triangle
that make
head.
people less likely to get divorced, right? What do you think some factors are there? Because you have I assume a mostly like male audience. I would so like what
You think? Gee, I wondered, does Undead Chronic have a male audience or a female audience? Given that YouTube is already predominantly like 10-1 male, and given that he literally pumps out probably the most aggressive anti-feminist propaganda I've ever seen, the most beautiful anti-feminist propaganda on the planet from this man, the most aggressive, most hardcore, most haterade anti-feminist propaganda I've ever seen. I wonder what his audience is. Jeez, man. You really had to say that.
are some factors that you think you could like present to your mostly male audience that might
No one wants to see your pits, Erudite. You're gross.
make them more or less likely, like in terms of like things they can do
Well,
personally.
this has been like studied. I mean,
well, I'm agreeing with
Alex is kind of right. He's like, this is a dumb question. Good point.
the data there. Sure, on the virgin thing, that's fine. That might be it. That might be.
No, I'm saying like in terms of other factors, like religion is one of them. What degree of higher education does the woman have? So
I say what age you get married matters too.
if she has higher education,
Yeah, that's true as well. Education. Finances, obviously, right? Financial background.
typically she's more likely to divorce.
Well, I'm not.
Income, job, social status, strata.
Sorry, Alex. I'm not asking what things that the guy can select for in women. I'm asking like what things he thinks he could tell his audience to do personally
Okay.
that
Alright, I'll
might
just
make
let
them
him- I'll
better
just let him
partners
answer
and
the
less
question.
likely to.
Okay.
Because if you're worried, your big concern seems to be women divorcing these men. So like, what are some things that you specifically think these men could do for themselves to make them better partners and less likely to have these women leave them?
That's very disingenuous framing. That's assuming that the reason women divorce men is because men need to become better partners and prevent women from divorcing them. It's a very feminist framing. I hope Chronic catches him on that. And this is a fallacy, is that the only reason women divorce men is because men are just bad partners and men are bums and men need to step it up and come on men and men are losers, and if we divorce you it's because we have a perfectly valid reason and it's all your fault. Can't be just because we might divorce on pure emotion and whatever the fuck we want, and it might be like, cheating or trying to monkey branch, or it can be a multitude of reasons why people get divorced and why people divorce. But at the end of the day, the woman is divorcing, and divorce is very evil. So regardless of the reason, the only time that divorce is permitted when female infidelity. It's in the Bible. But yeah, of course, the male feminist is going to frame it as it's men's fault. They need to step it up. If you get divorced as a man, it's your fault. Oh, really? Then why do all these billionaire men who are like Hollywood actors or like fucking billionaires literally get divorced still? Why do celebrities have failed lives? They're literally the richest, most handsome people on the planet. What more could you ask from them? And they have social skills. Like, so fuck off.
And if you don't talk about these things, I'd ask why.
Yeah, because I think it's probably a bias in that I know a lot of good men in my life, and I have a lot of guys come up to me, and I've seen other friends and people be like, I got divorced and beat. No, it's stuff like obvious stuff. Don't go Mike Tyson on your girl. You don't need to say that, right? It's kind of like, obviously you shouldn't beat your woman. Obviously you shouldn't just cheat on her. Obviously you shouldn't cheat on her. Obviously you shouldn't get drunk every day. This is definitely more Erudite's field. So my suggestions here are
shouldn't it be?
out of
Shouldn't it
the
be?
blue.
He's really gonna defer to her.
Because again, your audience is mostly male. So like,
What would I say?
Partner selection. Maybe.
What would I say? How to not get divorced by women? It's a good question. Kind of. Well, yeah. Aside from the statistical factors, what would I recommend men do? You want a woman whose father is going to be against divorce, and a woman who respects her father. You want probably a religious background, because that's the easiest place you're going to find it. You're going to have to find it. I'm sorry. You're not going to find an atheist, agnostic woman and family who is going to be like hyper anti-divorce. It's just not a thing. It's not real. So drop that fantasy. Nope. But the broader point I'm trying to say is that the success of a marriage is not just the individuals. It's also based on the surrounding family. And the family can act as a reinforcer, can act as a bearing, as a foundation, as a storm wall, against the problems of life. If you have a stable family and the extended family is supporting the marriage and they're compatible and they kind of force the individuals to tough it out instead of just breaking it up, right? So I'd say that's important, and I'd say the best way to avoid getting divorced in that sense, one weapon you can use is finding a woman where the father is incredibly anti-divorce. And if the woman respects her father, because you also need that too. If the woman respects her father, then she's not going to divorce you. She's much less likely to divorce you. If she has been raised by a father whom she respects and honors, who has an attitude of you do not divorce your husband unless he's cheating on you. Unless he's cheating on you, no divorce. That's not a real thing. We don't accept that in this family. It's not allowed. Look at the father's relationship with the mother. What kind of attitude did they have towards the marriage? Was it a stick it out no matter what? Or was it I'm on the verge of leaving you, I'm going to leave you? Or was it a broken family? Or was it they never really had any conflicts? Was it they averse to conflict? What was it? Was it just steeped in kind of non-relevant cultural tradition where they never really had to deal with divorce because they're ancient boomers? I would look at the dynamic of the extended family, and that is going to likely reflect how she approaches family dynamics with you. And what you want is you want her father to be anti-divorce. You want her father to be very religiously convicted. And then that's going to be the best way for you to predict her behavior And you also need to make sure that she respects her father, that she's not like actively rebelling, because that's not going to help. If her father's conservative, but she's like actively rebelling, well, then you got to assume the opposite, right? So, that's one tool, I'd say. Like, actually useful advice for men. Look at the extended family, because a marriage is not just two individuals getting together, it's a union of families. It matters.
Maybe you can talk about the virgin thing, but in terms of like being a good partner, which there's probably my understanding of like the larger predictors are in terms of like people, like whether or not people feel compatible over a long period of time.
Jesus, this guy can't speak, dude. Slow down. He's like a little goat.
And that probably has less to do with like whether or not she had sex before she met you, and probably has more to do with your relationship after you guys met. So there's probably like factors that contribute a lot more.
No,
so like I'm just curious why you don't go into those factors more. Again.
Yeah, I haven't seen studies on, how would you rate your communication? What's your communication style? Like, I don't know. Like, do you take out the trash once a week, twice a week? I don't see any of those.
Do you think it's worth looking into these things?
No, I don't think. Honestly, I don't think. I don't think.
If you say no to that, then I'm hesitant to believe you actually care about like your audience and whether or not they're staying in marriages.
I think no-fault divorce is a sin upon the world. I don't think a woman should be allowed to break the family in half because she's not happy. Why are you not happy?
Divorce shouldn't be real. There should be no divorce unless infidelity. Like, divorce as a readily available institution for the masses should not be a thing. You should not be able to choose to get a divorce. It should be something that you present almost like a crime with evidence of infidelity. Should be treated with that degree of severity. Should not be able to divorce your partner. It is a Christian institution, marriage. It belongs to Christians. Secularists, atheists should not be allowed to get married. Unless you are baptized and yeah, you shouldn't. If you're not baptized in the faith and you're not an active parishioner in the church and the priest does not sign off on your wedding, which he might do for whatever reason, he might say, you haven't been coming to church enough. How do I know you're actually Christian? You're forming this union under God, but you don't seem to respect God's word very much. Should I let you get married? Nah. So, in my opinion, you shouldn't even be allowed to get married unless you're Christian. And then if we kind of remember that, oh wait, Christians invented marriage. Oh wait, marriage is done in a church. Oh wait, Christians really have the rightful claim to ownership of marriage. It's our institution. It's not just a cookie cutter thing for everybody to do. The nature, the ontology, the deep meaning and significance, the base nature of marriage is that of a religious sacrament. You can't reduce it to this cookie cutter, drive-through, meaningless, mundane thing. So I'd say that. I would say I don't recognize any marriage that's not done under the church. And if you get divorced, I don't recognize it. I don't recognize that as valid. When you remarry, I don't recognize her as your wife, and I'm gonna have sex with her. I don't recognize her as your wife, actually. Right? Let's be real. Oh, you remarried? Not your wife. Oh, why? Was she infidelity? Infidulous? One sec. God damn it. Infidel. It's not like... there is no... Okay, I'm not crazy. There is no adjective form for infidelity. It's not a real word. Okay. No, we clarified that. It's good. So... Anyway, I forgot where we were.
earlier you pointed out, and I agree with you on this, like these kind of large scale changes, like you're not going to be able to impact those, right? You're not gonna ban no fault divorce, right? So like if you're giving advice to young men, your concern should probably be with things that they can actually control in their lives, right?
What the issue is that if you try to select for people personally on the basis of statistics that are correlative and not causalational, you're actually going to limit your pool artificially based on factors that don't matter. For example, let me give you an example. Black men are more likely to do
black
violent
men.
crime.
Ooh,
That's a
yeah.
statistical finding.
Yeah, that's pretty racist.
That doesn't mean that you wouldn't date Morgan Freeman because you think he's going to domestically abuse you, right? When it comes to partner selection, we go on dates and we select based on our chemistry, our pheromones, our similar values, a whole.
No, we don't. I don't date based on pheromones or chemistry. The chemistry is penis plus vajiji creates le bebe. That's the chemistry. A plus B equals AB. There you go. The genetics intertwine. DNA merges and replicates. That's the chemistry. That's all the chemistry you need. What chemistry? You're a man and a woman. You get together, you fall in love. Well, chemistry. See, this is the problem with the way society today approaches dating, is it views people as these like obscure puzzle pieces that need to find their perfect opposite half. You need to find your soulmate, man. I have my type, and I need to find my type if I'm gonna get together, man. I'm just not into her, bro. And you have too much selection. The reality is, you don't need all that. You're just being picky. But what's not picky is wanting a virgin, because that's not a thing relating to types. That's just women not being qualified. That's a qualification issue.
Gambit of things, right? Our beliefs that the person will be a good partner to us and how well we'll get along. And if you basically limit your selection based on
This
a
guy
number of,
jacking
like,
off? This is
small
Vikram?
correlative statistical
Why is he
findings
shaking, bro?
that will this is a poor strategy for selection.
Clean up your fucking
There will be a
apartment.
better selection to do this, to base it on chemistry and if you have similar values. That's a
agree.
better selection than virginity, because in the case of if you use virginity, you're actually
Well, how do you measure that? How do you measure chemistry? How do you consolidate chemistry into advice? Pick someone who's good for you. Duh.
removing a whole bunch of exceptions that
Yep.
might be excellent partners for you for no reason, for literally no reason, at least
Yeah,
based on the statistics stuff.
Yeah,
This
and
is
if I
why
could-
it's an ecological
No,
fallacy.
if I
right?
can find the special sauce, whatever it is, that makes a non-virgin
Women.
less likely to divorce. You also talk about it on my channel. I haven't been exposed to it, but I agree. It's a very artificial selection. There are not a lot of.
No, Chronic won't say the honest thing, which is non-virgin women are ugly. They have ugly souls. They're pretty on the outside, little plastic dolls, porcelain, oily-faced dolls. But deep down, their souls are ugly, and I don't want to date a woman with an ugly soul. And if you're not a virgin, which not so erudite, I can tell you're not a virgin. Definitely not a virgin. And you weren't a virgin when you got married, so don't lie and say shit like, well, yeah, of course not, I'm married. Shut the fuck up. You have an ugly soul, not so erudite. And I could never love someone and marry someone with an ugly soul. And that's the God honest truth.
Virgins around. It's kind of the same shtick when girls say they only want to date a guy that's 6'4". They're artificially they are limiting their selection. Sure, but what girls can actually get the 6'4" dude?
Okay, I think I'm done. I'm like tired of listening to these fucking goobers yap on about 2 points and bark about fallacy and whine and complain. And I feel like I have the debate pretty solidly captured under my domain expansion. No, I feel like I have this pretty well understood, so I'm going to drop it here. I don't feel like there's anything else we need to talk about. But anyway, that was Chronic. He's talking about non-virgins and kind of arguing it kind of weirdly, I would say. He's arguing from a like statistical utilitarian standpoint. And honestly, Alex playing with fire's questions were actually good, because he was basically saying, hey, if the statistics were different, or if the pragmatic elements were different, would you date this woman who's a non-virgin? And he could have trapped Chronic into saying that he would date a non-virgin if, like, for example, there was no divorce. Also, nice job, not so erudite, having your OBS elements captured, or maybe Alex playing with fire did that. But either way, I'll see everybody later.